Okay, so this is our presentation on children's services and the complications that arise from cross-cultural discipline methods.
Okay, introduction for this presentation would be understanding the issue around parenting. Understanding the issue around parenting is more complex and even in the area of immigration. When parents move to a new country, they need to adjust their parenting style to the new country where they move. And what is parenting? Parenting is a new spectrum, it's a broad spectrum of activities and philosophy. And the goal for this is raising a child to become individual and to contribute to the society. Newcomers face difficulties in their child rearing in the host country because
Get in there.
Because the parents want to ensure that their children fit into the Canadian society at the same time maintain their cultural heritage so that they will be able to fit into the society back home. And newcomers suffer from, like newcomers' families suffer from clashes between their culture and the Canadian culture.
So what is child abuse? Child abuse refers to the abusive or neglective behaviors by a caregiver that result in or places a child at risk of harm. So physical, sexual, and or emotional maltreatment can occur as a direct result of a caregiver's actions, and this can include hitting, not providing adequate food, clothing, or making your child go to school. So in 2008, an estimated 3.9% of children in Canada were the subjects of maltreatment investigations, with maltreatment being substantiated in 1.4% of cases the same year. Both figures grossly underrepresent the true amount of maltreatment cases, because a lot of these cases never make it into children's services because people are scared to make reports. Okay, so the act is basically what Children's Services has to follow in order to open a case. And when there is an allegation of abuse to a child, there has to be evidence that the abuse actually happened. And this can be evidenced by a laceration, a contusion, an abrasion, a scar, a fracture, or other bony injury, a dislocation, a sprain, hemorrhaging, the rupture of viscus, a burn, a scald, frostbite, the loss or altercation of consciousness or physiological functioning, or the loss of hair or teeth. So basically they have to have something that proves that the abuse is happening in order for an investigation to start.
So this is the act continued. As you can see, there's a lot of things that can potentially open an investigation. I'm just going to highlight a couple here. So you'll notice on the left-hand side, C, the child is neglected by the guardian, or H, the guardian of the child has subjected the child to or is unable to or unwilling to protect the child from cruel and unusual treatment or punishment. And on the right-hand side, B, deprivation of affection or cognitive stimulation, and C, exposure to family violence or severe domestic disharmony. And our immigrants in the Children's Services Department often are brought in because of family violence.
And just to make a note on that too, exposure to family violence or severe domestic disharmony doesn't just have to be between the parents. It can also be between the kids and the parents.
That's for my tiny club. For my tiny club.
Children's Services involvement. When Children's Services interfere with parents who are punishing their kids. Actually, historically, Child Protective Services established in USA and in Canada to make sure or to enhance children's well-being. And laws have been put in place for parents as they have the responsibility to meeting the physical, mental, emotional, educational, and medical needs of their children. if they fail to provide these needs, they will be putting kids to jeopardy. An intervention occurs as the result of report of abuse or neglect. If someone reported, that means the children's service is going to interfere. Research has shown that immigrants are largely unaware of or understand of children's services or children protective services standard, and also social cultural, because of the cultural sensitivity towards immigrant parenting values and practice. And we have here example from Sierra Leone, Canadian father. He got accused of child abuse because he was serving rice to his kids in the morning and like for breakfast, and correcting them through yelling. He got accused and went to court. And also here we have Child Prevention Act established in 1974. Since the establishment of this act, there has been increase in number of reported cases to children protective services. And child protection services intervention conducts series of stages, such as intake, assessment, initial assessment, investigation, family assessment, case planning, and service provision, and evaluation of the case process and case closure. It's lots, you can read through it. Also here we have theories, framework used in child physical punishment. I'm not gonna say all of it, but here they use for conduct intervention, they use social psychological model, and which is emphasis family violence and abuse. And the second one is sociocultural model, which include macro level analysis for the family violence as well. The third one is system theory, which general system theory, and used to assess violence in home, and also by looking at the family. And also we have resource theory. It's approach address family violence also. And also ecological model. Also we use this one to do the intervention.
Okay, so then we took a look at some of the cultural methods of discipline. So Islamic parents are specifically instructed to be affectionate towards their young children. However, the Quran also advocates harsh means to control disobedient children. But two concepts that have been repeatedly appearing when studying Muslim culture are warmth and control. So some of the severe physical discipline methods that were found when doing an experiment were shaking a child of less than 2 years old was practiced as a severe discipline method. Choking a child or squeezing his or her neck with the hands was practiced. Burning, scalding, or branding the child was also practiced. And then threatening a child with a knife or gun was the least practiced, but still is pretty scary when you think about kids having knives and guns pointed at them. And then the last three disciplinary methods that they looked at was kicking a child, attempting suffocation, and beating them over and over.
Okay, African discipline method. Actually, this research done here in Alberta for disciplinary practices of East, West, and Southern and Central African immigrants, parents in Alberta. And they found out that these parents, they use corporal or physical discipline, and corporal punishment is defined as force to purpose of inflicting pain, but not injury, to control or correct the child behavior. And also the United Nations Committee that enforces the Convention on Rights of the Child defined corporal punishment as any punishment that requires physical force to cause some degree of pain or discomfort for the child. Also, we have here parents, they said they use this kind of discipline with their kids. First one is striking. Striking is a common form of corporal punishment, and they use devices such as ruler or bamboo cane or hand or leather strap or wooden spoon or belt or slipper. And they use this one they believe that physical pain from spanking was necessary to correct the children. And also some parents, they use persuasive discipline or both of them, or punishment and persuasive. And this one, they use it to make sure the kids are listening to them. And the last one is transitional fostering. And this one, they use it when the kids or children are not listening to their parents, so they're gonna send them back to Africa to grandparents or auntie or uncle.
Okay, so some of the outcomes of physical punishment. So corporal punishment doesn't have a positive effect on child behavior. And some of the physical associations with punishment could lead to depression, unhappiness, anxiety, feelings of hopelessness, and some kids could even resort to committing suicide because they can't control what's happening to them at home.
Here, language barriers for African people in Canada. And there are several communication barriers among the immigrants in Canada. The first one is language barrier. Since most Africans are only conversant with their native language, making it hard for them to learn and adapt to the national language in Canada. The second one is face communication obstacle by lacking familiarity with unspoken rules for Canadian. And these communication barriers cause them to lack accessing to network or lack recognition. And the last one is some immigrants who live together, they love to speak the same language, but because they don't need to speak English, they say that they think it's better to speak their own language, not speaking English, because most of them, they are staying home, moms or dad.
Okay, so here's some supports available to help out with language barriers. So if you're ever working with a client and there is a language barrier, you can reach out to any of these organizations and they should be able to help you. And here's some additional teaching tools for new immigrants for intercultural parenting. So if you have a newcomer that is looking at getting parenting skills or looking at assimilating to Canadian culture, you can reach out to these places as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was researching Asian discipline methods, I decided to include the emotional damage guy because he makes fun a bit about the Asian culture and the stereotypes of parenting in the Asian culture. Asian culture refers to 43 distinct ethnic groups, and as you can see, they're unique to language, religion, and customs. So we also have some traditional punishments for failure to uphold to the ideal. So one of them is to lock the child out of the house. This is supposed to shame them because they're supposed to be fitting into the society. The individual is not important. It's what happens for the overall society, the overall family. So we've got different Asian ideals. As you can see, there's some ideals under the Chinese, but I wanted to focus on the Indian because I found it really neat. This quote, it says, "You treat your son like a king for the first 5 years, then like a slave for the next 10, and like a friend thereafter." Some parenting styles amongst Asians, so the Western studies have found that authoritarian parenting equals poor school outcomes, but Asian studies have not found the same thing. And of course, they lead heavier on the authoritarian parenting. Child rearing is a community responsibility, which is why some immigrants struggle so much when they come to Canada and they lose that sense of community. So some stressors for immigrants. The migration process is incredibly stressful. Language barrier, difficulty securing employment, and cultural differences. Some immigrants experience a sense of betrayal and hopelessness. One of the fathers of a child that was in children's services said that for him, he had gained not one master's, but 2 masters, and then came to Canada to give his family a better life. And now he's on social assistance. So those frustrations play into what might also lead abuse to occur in the home. When cultures clash, children's services and Asian immigrants. So as social workers, it is important that we develop a flexible understanding of the impacts of migration has on family dynamics. Authority can also be equal with fear. One mom explained that in her country, when an authority figure showed up at your door, it meant that someone in your family was going away for good. So we have this fear thing to overcome. Connection between feelings of isolation by caregivers and abuse of children has been found. And some people, they said that even after being in Canada for years, that sense of isolation is still there because they don't have that same community they did from their country. Their lack of accustomed to social supports, also a contributing factor. And maltreatment occurs when stressors outweigh the supports. So supports for workers in Medicine Hat. So we have SAMIS Immigration, which pretty much covers a lot of what the supports are for immigrants. LINK is the classes that you can attend to learn English, and they cover the cultural aspect of living in Canada. They get them out into our community. There's also Community Connections, which is a volunteer group where you can meet and you could work in improving your English skills, also get that community connection going. And SWIS is the in-school supports for children and parents that are immigrants. So they kind of act as an in-between to give them that support on their parenting or on the issues that might be arising from the barriers at school. And then of course, there's also the language line if you're having difficulty communicating with your client.
And here we have, for more information for workers, there is a small booklet. It's about relating to child discipline, child abuse, and child neglect. And you can just click on it and you can get the small book and you can have it or give it to someone in need for this information.
And these are our questions that we have. We're going to have those posted up on Blackboard for you. So we look forward to the discussion.
And these are our articles, and we are looking forward to, after you read them, the discussion, we're going to post it in Blackboard.
Okay, so in conclusion, we think it's very important that when dealing with clients from other cultures, it's essential that we be flexible. And when I say flexible, I mean learning about what their upbringing was and what their cultural disciplinary measures are, and seeing how we can kind of help them understand how our cultural discipline methods work and kind of meet in the middle. We don't want to take our rights, don't want to take away their rights to making decisions for their own kids, but we do have to find a way to show them how our disciplinary methods work here in Canada. But if we can just all put away our paradigms and listen with our hearts, we think the world could be a better place. And here's our references.
What's